Hello and welcome to NPC. That stands for Next Portable Console. It's a show about the games, the video games we take with us.
Yes.
I'm one of your hosts, Brendon Bigley. I'm here with another one of your hosts, John Voorhees.
Hello, Brendon. Hello, Brendon. You got me wondering now. Would there be a podcast in the board games you take with them?
I think so. You know, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. I don't know if I've talked about this publicly. Oh, I think I did. I teased it somewhere else. I've been working on a card game for a couple of weeks, like a game that you can play with a standard deck of cards that I've been refining the rules of and play testing with friends and stuff. And we'll probably be putting out soon, but that does mean that I've been traveling around with a deck of cards on me.
I saw
recently.
you last
It's
week.
Literally a game that I'm taking with me.
Yeah. You had a deck of cards in your hands last week when we recorded.
Did I?
You did.
Yeah.
You were playing around with the cards. I was like, what's he doing?
Yeah. I was really hyper fixated on that for a little bit. But the rules are feeling good, so I'm just figuring out how to present the rules to everybody else.
Well, that is a game you can take with you. Maybe, on cards, but, card deck.
The goal of that game is basically if you have a deck of cards with you, it will take you 1 to 2 minutes at most to explain the rules to people and start playing a game.
That's
which I feel like is the thing that it's the thing that always kills me with card games is everybody's
Exactly.
always like, okay, let me talk to you for 15 minutes and then you need to start playing and then you need to be explaining the rules while you're playing. I'm like, let's skip all that stuff and just make something
Let's
quick.
just make something that's immediately fun. Yeah, no,
Yes,
I love it. Absolutely
exactly.
love it. Well, we're going to have an exclusive here on NPC about the card game. Well, I guess we kind of already have.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I'll say that it's called Monarch is the name of it.
I love
coming soon to a wavelengths.online near you.
All right. I'll be looking forward to that. Well, we have news to talk about today, but first, I thought we would talk about a pre-order that you made that's coming in the mail soon.
Yeah, hypothetically, at least as of the time we're recording this, it should arrive tomorrow. I don't have tracking information, so we'll find out if it's actually showing up tomorrow. But I did pre-order the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8, which is, I think, the full correct name.
I think that's right.
Of that cellular telephone, which I imagine if you're watching this show or listening to this show, you've probably heard of this phone before. It's kind of a big deal across a bunch of different vertices. I think one of them is just the basically public knowledge at this point that Samsung is providing the folding display for the upcoming iPhone Ultra or iPhone Fold or whatever it ends up being called.
Yeah.
And because of that, obviously Samsung being Samsung was like, okay, well, if we're making this for Apple, we're also just going to make our own version, release it before Apple. So classic of them to do that.
Very.
But the thing that is very specific to this phone and that upcoming iPhone is that it is returning to a form factor that was prevalent around kind of the early parts of the folding phone world, which is a more passport style folding phone shape. So instead of being, tall like this and then opening up and being basically two phones side by side, it's a little more squat. And actually, I think the best way of showing it off, I got the case already because the case came immediately.
Of course, it always did.
But if you look at them side by side, it's pretty noticeable.
Yeah, I'm looking at that's an Air, right?
This is an iPhone Air, yeah.
Yeah, so the smaller phone kind of ends right at the camera bump for the iPhone, so it's a good bit shorter.
And it's a little bit wider. It's not like that much wider, but it's a little bit wider as well. More squat. And you might be wondering, why am I talking about this on NPC Next Portable Console? Well, the thing about it is that when you unfold this phone, it basically becomes a 4x3 screen, which is about as perfect as possible for a lot of different retro consoles. But the thing about the Fold 8 and the way that it's been marketed is they're basically marketing it as like a content consumption device more than anything else. It's, I think, the big differentiator between the 8 and the 8 Ultra in Samsung's lineup this year, which is that more standard, two phones next to each other thing, which they're saying is a productivity phone, has a third camera that has a telephoto lens on it, etc. But this phone, the 8, even when you're watching a YouTube video in 16:9, you're actually getting a bigger screen than you are even with the 8 Ultra, just because of the way the 4x3 screen is
because it's wider.
letterboxing. Yes, it's letterboxing 16:9 content. Even that ends up being bigger than if you're looking at it on the 8 Ultra, which is interesting. So I think from a game perspective, that inside screen is going to be really fascinating for gaming. And I've been already kind of experimenting with some stuff and trying some stuff out. For example, I ordered this as well, which is the 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth controller, which I forgot that they made.
I was going to say, I totally lost track of that was even a product that they had.
Yeah, because the problem with the Samsung Galaxy 8, Galaxy
Fold
Z, whatever, is the USB-C port is placed in a spot where if you try to plug it into a telescopic controller that has the USB-C port on the right side of it, the bottom of the screen hangs down. So you have this really kind of unwieldy, strange thing going on. So you kind of need a Bluetooth controller, which of course people get all up in arms about the latency of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as concerned about that. I've never really had issues with latency that I couldn't overcome in 5 minutes of playing a video game. Usually your mind just kind of sinks back to it, unless it's really, really bad. I've had it with audio, but not really with controllers. But this 8BitDo controller, I mean, this is just the 8. I mean, this is just the ultimate. You know, this is just like the ultimate controller that you and I use basically on a daily basis, turned into a telescopic controller. So I'm excited to try that out. I haven't opened it yet because I kind of want to try it with that phone. I've also heard that the M-Con works fantastically with this phone, but it doesn't have MagSafe, so you need to get a MagSafe case, which is where this came from. So I'm excited to try all that stuff out.
Does it work opened up, or is it just work closed?
Great question. I don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like opened up might be a little difficult.
It might be difficult, but also it might work perfectly because the M-Con plateau you can kind of rearrange.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Just shift it over a little bit and it could work really well. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm excited about Samsung's phone actually, because I really do feel like we're kind of, there's a couple things going on. One is the return to that form factor, which I think 4x3 is perfect for playing games. Yes. And I also feel like the screen technology has gotten to a place where it really is going to become, if you have the budget, an option for people in a way that, you don't have to be constantly worrying about it breaking as much. And the glass is going to be a lot smoother and flatter when you bend it. And I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting phone. Yeah,
I know this might be sacrilege, considering I'm talking to John Voorhees of MacStories.net, but I think even just kind of reading the tea leaves about the upcoming iPhone, my sense, and this could all be proven wrong and then egg on my face, etc., but my sense based on just the conversation around it, and even a year of using the iPhone Air, which is, I think I've said before, the only iPhone I've ever disliked, I have a hunch that the Galaxy Fold 8 is actually going to be the better of the two phones from a cost perspective and also a feature perspective.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, look, and Android's a lot more flexible in terms of operating system, so it lets you experiment with a lot more, which I think is important when you're spending that much money and, you have a form factor that can be used in a lot of different ways. I do think
Samsung's also 6 years into making folding phones at this point?
Yeah, 6 or 7. It's been a long time.
Not only in the manufacturing side of it, but also in the software development side of it. And hypothetically, I think the dream that everybody has about the iPhone Ultra is that you open it up and it switches to an iPad, right? It's like iOS closed, iPad OS open.
Right.
But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, and I'm dubious about getting that phone, the first generation of that phone, and immediately having like a stellar software experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. Although I do think there will be some sort of multi-app solution when Apple introduces it. I agree, though. I don't think it's going to be the full iPad experience. And the flip side of that, though, is that on the Android side, Android tablets are not nearly as developed as iPads are. So you do have some software issues when you deal with something like Samsung's phone. I do think it's interesting, too, that they're marketing it as a consumption device. Because this is something I'm going to talk about next week on App Stories with Chris Lawley, which is we're talking about the iPhone Fold, or whatever it's going to be called. And I think we're going to head right back into where we were a few years ago with the iPad, where people argue about whether it's a consumption device or a productivity device. Because I really would like to see it be a productivity device. I mean, there was a time in my life when I commuted on a train into Chicago every day, and my phone was an essential work tool for writing for Mac Stories, because I would sit on the train and just bang out articles with my thumbs. I mean, it was the best time to do it. It was like 40-minute trip. I could crank out an article really quickly on the train. And that changed when I started working, and my iPhone became a lot less important as a productivity tool, but still, important as a communications tool, but not so much for doing work. Yeah. But with a folding iPhone, I could see, if it's done right, I could see using that to do things like more research, more writing, be able to, just throw the phone in my pocket and maybe a keyboard in a bag and just leave and have the absolute ultra light setup, which would be great for writing. And I also feel like there's a world where Apple figures out a way to make this kind of like a creator device where people are filming video with the camera and then opening it up and doing the editing on the inside.
Yeah, that's a thing that Samsung's also been kind of going in on with the Fold. I think specifically because when you fold the screen down and you hold the phone like this, you can use those back cameras, but then also get a preview of yourself in that bottom screen, or like what is the outside cover screen, which I think is really interesting. I don't know how much I'm going to use that personally. I'm keeping the iPhone Air as basically a camera to shoot YouTube videos and to be testing iOS stuff, for this show and everything else. Yeah. But I do think that the Galaxy Fold 8 has a lot of really interesting stuff going on. And as we talked about last week, I think we talked about this on the show, it has almost the same specs as the Odin 3. It's like very similar. There are issues with overheating, I think, is the one problem. I've seen a lot of people talking about if you're trying to run like really intense stuff on Game Native, like it'll basically overheat and throttle itself, and your performance will just tank. But I'm curious from the perspective of like, what happens when I put Cocoon on here and I have, the two screens, right? If I'm using it on the cover screen, if I'm using it on the inside screen, what does that feel like? What does it feel like when I'm jumping into Game Native? Like if I'm playing something kind of lower stakes, like Fields of Mystria, which just came out in 1.0, that's a game I've been playing an unbelievable amount of on my Thor over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's like if I could have that in my pocket at all times, and then something like an MCon also, or like you said, like throw a keyboard in a bag, just throw a controller in a bag, that's kind of a dream device for me in some ways. And I know that you and I specifically, we oscillate back and forth between this idea of the everything device, and like there is a desire to move away from your phone, and then when your phone becomes your everything device, what happens to things like the Thor and the RG Rotate, and a lot of big questions there. But that's kind of the life I want to try living for a bit and see if that feels like too much. So I got the Fold 8 with a lot of storage, like a lot of internal storage in it, specifically for that reason, because I'm kind of curious to mess around with that stuff and throw kind of bigger games on it and see how that feels. Set it up as an emulation device as much as it is a thing that I'm going to be reading books on and watching YouTube videos on. But I'm curious to see what the Android lifestyle feels like when I commit to it for a full year, because I switch back and forth all the time, but I've never committed to Android for more than like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. I think storage is an interesting issue too with these kind of phones, because there was a time where I was buying more storage in iPhones, like, a full terabyte. And then I realized, I really am not using that. And so I dipped back down to 512. And then I found myself filling it up again because games are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, especially with some of the titles that are coming out on Apple Arcade. So, I'm kind of wondering whether and especially when if it's going to be, if a folding phone is going to end up being not just a consumption device and thing for games and video and all that, but also a productivity device, it might be time to go back up to a higher level of storage. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've been rocking 256 on the Air for the past year, and I think that's actually the most storage I've ever had in an iPhone. And this time around, I went 512 for the Galaxy Z Fold 8, which I think will be probably enough for the stuff that I'm going to be testing out on it. And then I also, like, I'm pretty if I'm putting games on my phone, I only a couple. It's usually like just the ones I know I'm actually going to play when I'm out on the road. It's like Ridge Racer 2, Mario Kart DS. I'll put Fields of Mystria on there and something like Ball Pit. Things that you can jump into and jump out of pretty quickly. Maybe like one RPG that I'm making my way through, like one Pokemon game, but that'll be interesting. I will say one last point because you brought up the iPad. I am selling my iPad also.
Oh, you are? What iPad do you have? I forget.
I have the M4 iPad Pro.
Okay.
And John, I use it for two things.
What?
Writing scripts and watching YouTube videos. And I'm like, I don't need this iPad for this, especially if I'm about to get a folding phone that when you unfold it is the exact same screen size as the iPad mini. Like, I don't need this thing anymore.
I think the iPad is going to be squeezed even more. I mean, the iPad was already getting squeezed by Apple Silicon Macs that, are so capable, and the prices have come down so far with things like the Neo. I mean, of course, Apple's raised prices recently, but there's still pressure coming on the iPad because the iPad prices went up astronomically. Yes. And now if you have a folding phone, it's going to squeeze it from that direction too. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all this goes. One of the reasons I end up having a lot of storage too, just to close out that thought, is that it's just an occupational hazard. I have something like 500 or 600 apps on my phone right now because I'm testing them all the time, and I'm not very good about taking them off. In fact, one of my tricks is that in order to keep up with all the apps that I find interesting and might write about, I just keep them on my phone. That way, when the App Store updates, I can look at the notes and I see what's coming out and what's new without having to necessarily rely on people emailing me. I can just look at that every week and think about what I'm going to write about. So
one of the things I'm most excited about is setting up this phone with no backups or anything. It's going to be so. I wrote down a list in. I use Capacities as my note-taking app. I wrote down a list in Capacities of just like all the apps I need to download on my phone, and it was like 30, and it was so refreshing to be like, wow, this is everything I need. Yeah. Even for like testing fun, weird stuff, like it's just 30 apps versus the baggage I've been carrying with me probably since the iPhone 7 or whatever.
Sure.
Just continuing to back up over and over and over again. Either way, hypothetically, I will have that phone in hand by the time we record the next episode, which will be interesting.
That's good to hear. I actually have another Apple-related topic for you that I'm going to spring on you that's not in our notes, which is last week I did a short review of Madden NFL 27 Arcade Edition. I got it a little early from EA Sports, and I got to say that I was impressed. First of all, I'm not really a football person. I don't know that much about. I don't really watch football much, and so I'm not really the target audience for this game at all. However, I was really impressed with what EA did with incorporating the iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, and Mac technology. I mean, it's across all those devices. Yeah. Took advantage of the 120 hertz refresh rate, has cross-play, cross-saves, controller support. A lot of AAA type titles that come out on arcade or just in general on the App Store really feel like sort of like afterthoughts where they're ported, sure, but they don't really take advantage of Apple's hardware. And so, in the world of John keeps looking at gaming on the Mac and other Apple devices and wondering if it will ever go anywhere, this is a game that falls into the could be something. It's a positive sign.
It's just I feel like once every 4 months we get one gleaming example of a potential utopian future where Apple takes games seriously. Yeah. Because either they, in this case, they clearly paid EA a bunch of money to do it.
And it came out a week before all the other platforms, which is very unusual.
That's wild.
It's very unusual.
That's very interesting.
Full week before it came out on PC or consoles or anything. Yeah, and it's clear that there was a lot of wood put behind this release by Apple and EA.
I think the things for me that I am still finding exciting are the projects like Crossover and GameHub on Mac and things like that. Like the fact that like my wife Persia now is playing Guild Wars 2 every day on her Mac very easily through GameHub, just like boot this thing up. Guild Wars 2 is already installed. Boot that up. It just looks like a Mac app, and she's playing it, and she's off to the races and having a good time. Amazing. I had the same exact experience with Fields of Mystria. Like, when that hit 1.0, the first thing I did was I booted it up on my Mac to see if it worked with the new engine that they threw in there. And it works beautifully. I mean, it works exactly like it does on my PC. And then again, you're getting, the cloud save of it all. Like, that, to me, speaks to the potential here. And as you and I have said 100,000 times over the years, it's like all Apple really needs to do is take the tools they've already built that other people are already productizing and just say, we're integrating that into the App Store.
It's just not their DNA is the problem.
It's not.
Although
they need an executive level person going to bat for games. This is the thing. They need some kind of like chairperson whose specific focus is video games, and they would do well.
They do have video game people at Apple.
They do.
Okay. They do have marketing and PR people who are dedicated to arcade and gaming and as a part of the App Store. But it's as a part of the App Store, not as its own thing. And it is, again, because it's part of the App Store, those people aren't the people running the App Store. Those are the people who are, working for whoever's running the App Store. So that's an issue. I think the thing that maybe more than anything years ago got me kind of hooked on keeping an eye on this is when Apple added game controller support, because that seemed like a sign that they were willing to incorporate hardware and technology from other companies. I mean, sure, it's they're just Bluetooth controllers, but they have worked, I think, pretty closely with like Sony and Microsoft to make sure that those controllers pair really easily and nicely. There is some custom software going into those controller firmwares that make it work with Apple devices better than if you just buy like a Bluetooth controller off the shelf. So I don't know. That probably is what gave me hope more than anything, but it hasn't really gone much beyond that.
No, unfortunately not. Man, Fields of Mystria.
Yeah.
It runs on everything.
Yeah, of course it does.
Pretty nice. I haven't tried it on the Rotate. I imagine it does not run on the Rotate. The Rotate has... I've been pushing up at the limits of what the Rotate is capable of recently. I was running, actually, we talked about that Pokemon mod last week, the recomp.
Yeah, how does it play? I put it on, but I only played a little bit.
It runs okay on the Rotate is how I'd put it. If you try to turn on the like voxel mod and play it that way, it slows to a crawl.
Oh, okay.
If you're not using that, because you don't need to play it with the voxel mod on, it runs beautifully. But yeah,
the voxel mod really does stress out the hardware, because I had to go to my Thor and it gets the fan spinning up very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks amazing and it's a lot of fun. The other day I somehow I got into the settings and I changed a setting and didn't realize it. I finally found what was going on. I had sped up the game to 200x, I think. and I was like, I was moving the thumbstick and I was like, okay, I just jumped from one side of the room to the other. What's going on here? And I was like, I
would recommend if you're playing that. I've been checking that out on the Thor as well. If you're playing that on the Thor, I would recommend bumping the frame rate down to either 30 or 60.
Yeah,
much more stable experience.
Yes, I tried that too, because I was like, 120, and the fans just immediately light up, and it's noisy, and it's noisy enough that it's masking the music. I'm like,
your Thor enters the stratosphere.
Yeah, it's much better to be at like 30 or 60. 60 works pretty well. It still will get the fans going, but it's not a bad way to do it.
This is such a classic episode of NPC without Federico that we haven't even touched the news, and we've been talking for like 25 minutes. Do you want to talk about just like a couple items of news, and then we'll move on to XL?
We should. I still don't have shipping details for my my Pocket Nova from Retroid, but I'm hoping that it comes soon. I did get charged for it, and I guess that's a good thing, because the price of the Pocket Nova just got bumped $10 by Retroid, which, not the end of the world, but it's just when you add all these things together, it gets to be a lot. There's just so many things bumping the prices of these devices up these days, and to have them raise it almost immediately after launching it is kind of unfortunate. You kind of wish that had been baked into the announcements so we wouldn't have to do that later. But it is I think they pointed to the Snapdragon prices that we talked about last week going up as the reason for the $10 increase.
Yeah. I think we live in a world, and I'll continue to shout this out for anyone who's ever interested in buying any device ever, basically. We continue to live in a world where if you don't buy a thing the second it launches, realistically, you will never be able to buy it at that price ever again.
Yeah, no, I think that that's very true. And I was just, as we were getting ready for the show today, I did see there are now, IGN was reporting that all memory sales are full through 2027. They're like every bit of memory is spoken for by somebody all the way through the end of next year. And that is just, that's going to be, I mean, think about it. If you were like starting a new company, you wanted to create a new handheld, you wouldn't have a way to really do it. I mean, I'm sure there are secondary markets for some of this stuff, but it's going to keep people from entering these markets too. I mean, any newcomers.
That's so scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary to think about.
Yeah, and you see it through all these stories. I mean, we've got, we also have some news here about what Magmi's doing and the Conquer Pocket Advance, and they too have higher shipping than I would normally have thought would be. Like I think it's $20 to ship an AYANEO Pocket Advance, and that seems a little on the high end to me. And I think that that's remnants of some of the tariff stuff that was the bigger story.
Yeah,
about a year ago. And to me, like one of the things we got was they did a video, a hands-on showcase video of the Pocket Advance. AYANEO did, and there wasn't a lot new, but we do know that the price at the bottom tier for 3 gigabytes of memory and 32 gigs of storage is going to be $89. And I look at that, and I also then think about, Anbernic's Game Boy Advance clone. And while I really do like AYANEO's styling and design, those little tiny L2 and R2 buttons.
Such a weird decision. Yeah.
It just seems the thing. Yeah. So that's a weird decision. And it also seems
those prices are better than I thought they were going to be, though. I didn't expect this to launch for anything under $100.
Yes. If you go the Anbernic route, I haven't looked at their prices recently, but I think you'd be spending about $20 less, though, probably. Maybe.
Yeah. If you want, I mean, the RGSP has pricing and pre-order pages up now, and that thing, I think the pre-order price is $60, and the MSRP is going to be 65 or 70, somewhere in that vicinity.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So it's like, it's not that bad. That's with no SD card or anything, but you're still getting onboard storage.
Right.
Or whatever.
Right. And you have to keep in mind that those micro SD prices are going up too. But the thing is that I think that the lower end is a little more insulated from a lot of this stuff because these are older chipsets and memory sure is going up. But a lot of these devices like this Pocket Advance only needs 3 gigabytes and it'll handle all the Game Boy stuff. So totally fine with that. Helps keep the price down.
That reminds me, just totally offhand. I'm helping a friend with a project, I think in a couple weeks, but I ordered the TrimUI Smart Pro S to help them out with this project, which I'm excited to get my hands on and mess around with. I'll talk about that when it shows up, but that'll be fun because I feel like that's also kind of in this same price bracket.
Yeah.
But I feel like is kind of one of those like more established things in a way, and then also gets closer to that PSP form factor that I've been talking about wanting for a long time.
It's been around longer, and that'll be an interesting one. We've got some good hardware coming. We've got Pocket Novas and your phone and all kinds of things. It'll be some things to talk about going forward. I don't know. What else do we have today, Brendon?
Honestly, I think the MagicX Mini Dream is one of those devices that people are really excited about. I think specifically just the OLED panel on that thing.
It's a tiny OLED panel. It's like, what is it, 3.5 inches?
Yeah, it's really small. I have a hunch that people will like this device a lot. I don't know. MagicX is I feel like one of those manufacturers that I still feel like they came out of nowhere. They've been around for a while now, but I still feel like they're coming out of nowhere and they're like an underdog in some ways, but people tend to like their stuff a lot. And I think this device specifically being, I think it's like $80 if you pre-order it with an OLED panel and a 4x3 screen, It's not, Pocket Nova performance, obviously. It doesn't even get close to that. But for most of the stuff that people want to be doing on a device like that, that's the weird thing about the Pocket Nova is like, if you're buying that, you're really buying it to play like GameCube and PS2 stuff. And then higher, which is like at that point, I think I would probably buy a different device personally. But I don't know, the fact that this MagicX device is like, hey, if you're thinking about buying the Pocket Nova, and the stuff you actually want to play is like Game Boy, PS1, N64, Dreamcast, Super Nintendo, etc., like that's probably going to run pretty great on this hypothetically $80 device.
Yeah, this is
with an OLED screen. It also has the OLED screen.
Right, and this is exactly what I think towards the end of last year I said I was hoping to see happen, which is to see OLED trickle all the way down to devices that don't need state-of-the-art chipsets, because everybody wants the games to look good. And so as long as you can get a chip that's good enough to drive an OLED screen, you can finally play those games that are older on a really great screen. They're actually putting out 4 different versions of this. They're called the LL, the LP, the AL, and the AP. So they're going to win the award. As possible. Yeah, they may win the award to take it from Anbernic for unconventional naming. Not sure what those all mean. And we should say too that what has come out about this so far, these are just renders. We haven't even seen real hardware. They made very unconventional in the sense that they first announced the screen like a week or two ago. They mentioned that they were coming out with an OLED small screen, and now they've got renders and some pricing and things. And the battery is going to be like 3,800 milliamp hours, which is for a device this size probably pretty good.
Let me hit you with some information, John. I'm reading this piece on Retro Handhelds about the Mini Dream. The LL stands for Mini Dream with Linux as the operating system and passive cooling. Okay. LP is Linux and no, that can't be right. No, either way, it's Android and Linux or active or passive cooling is what's happening here, which is fascinating.
I wonder what version of Android they'll put on this. Probably like 11, I would think, something like that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the price difference ends up being between these as well. Like, is there going to be a price difference between, like, if I wanted Android and active cooling versus Linux and passive cooling? I imagine that those two devices would cost different amounts of money, considering the different pieces you'd need to make those things work. Yeah. But who knows?
I don't know. So there's a lot to be, like all of these. Well, I'm sure over the next month we'll hear a lot more about what MagicX has to offer.
Yeah. All right. You want to move on?
Yeah, we should move on. We have some news about GammaOS, and I know you have done more with GammaOS than I have. I mean, now there's Nano 1.4 that came out, which works with the RG Rotate. Now, I have not installed this. I'm pretty happy with my Cocoon setup on the Rotate, but I know you've been spending some time with Gamma on other devices. How's it been?
I like Gamma a lot. The place where Gamma surprised me the most was the Anbernic RGDS. That was the one where that device went from something that I wouldn't recommend to basically anybody to a device that I thought started to make more sense. And from what I understand, I gave mine away. But from what I understand, Anbernic has actually updated their own operating system on that device and kind of brought it more in line with, I think, what people wanted it to be, and then also release their own version of Linux on that device as well, which is also interesting. But Gamma, I think, is just like a fantastic project in general. The person who runs that is like prolific in the work that they do. And this new version of GammaOS Nano, I think, is interesting because it's basically built to be almost replicating like when you download a custom firmware for a Linux handheld, like if you were downloading Onion OS for the MIUI Mini or whatever. Right. It's basically trying to replicate that experience but via Android, which I think makes a lot of sense on something like the Rotate. This is not a thing that I've tested yet, but I do want to try out. I think I'm concerned about if it will wipe out the version of Android that I have currently, and then also the setup process of going through Cocoon again and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if I'm super into, but I think the thing about GammaOS Nano that is exciting to me as a front end is that it comes with all of these different themes, which are just pre-built into the OS and I think look really nice. Like there's a DSi one, which I love the DSi, so I'm kind of a freak for that. But also like the cross media bar from the PS3, which is I think like honestly, weirdly, and maybe this is just years of Stockholm syndrome from using RetroArch, but I think it's like one of my favorite bits of UI like on a console ever. And then another one that Gamma made themselves, but I think a lot of this stuff also is worth mentioning because it comes with like pre-configured and preloaded versions of emulators that are confirmed to work on this device, and in some cases better than if you downloaded like the Google Play version or whatever, or just downloaded it off GitHub. So like a pre-configured version of Drastic is on here, which I don't love Drastic, but the fact that it'll work probably great out of the box is a nice feeling. Because I have had some slowdown issues with Melon DS on the Rotate here and there. Nothing too wild, but like there's a version of Mario Kart DS that I play a lot that's called CTGP. It's like a fan modded version of Mario Kart DS that adds like, I don't know, 100 tracks and more characters and stuff like that. Some of the larger, more ambitious fan created tracks definitely slow the device down. But whatever. Either way, interested in this project. I'm a backer of Gamma's Patreon, so I will probably download this and see if I can install it in a way that's non-destructive to the setup that I have currently.
Yeah, no, you really put your finger on it for me too. I mean, the thing about the RG Rotate is not only is there the concern that you're going to wipe out your version of Android to a point where it makes it difficult to use going forward, but also just installing anything on the Rotate is just a painful process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
All right, Brendon. Well, that is it for today's episode of NPC Next Portable Console. We are going to be back in another week, and I believe next week Federico will be back from his. You know what he saw when he was on his vacation? He sent me a video of dozens and dozens of goats that were walking down the road that he was driving, and he had to stop because he could not get through the pack of goats, and his dogs were barking wildly out the window at the goats. As you can imagine.
Sounds really nice.
Yeah, it looked
idyllic.
It did. It was idyllic. It was like Italian countryside for sure. It was exactly what you would think it would look like. Yeah. In any event, you can find me and Brendon all over the place on the internet. Brendon's over at wavelinks.online, and you can check out overworld.vg, and I'm at macstories.net, and both of us are on social media. Just search for our names there. Talk to you next week, Brendon.
Bye.